Okay, there we go.
Hello everyone. This is the 5th Epical Revelation Fellowship. I'm Reverend Dr. Roger Paul, and today is April 27th, 2014, and today we're going to start paper 7 of the Urantia book, Relation of the Eternal Son to the Universe. Let's have a little prayer and we'll get started. Father, thank you for bringing us together today. Thank you for this wonderful revelation that we might share it with each other. Thank you for the knowledge we gain from it. Thank you for allowing us to share it with strangers that we meet, come in contact to. Pray that you open our hearts and our minds today that we might learn something and that we take something away from this meeting today. Bless our family and friends that can't be here today, and we thank you for the people that listen at home. And we say this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. Okay. Relation of the eternal Son to the universe. Let me turn my clicker on. And Diane, would you like to start with the first one?
Okay. The original Son is ever concerned with the execution of the spiritual aspects of the Father's eternal purpose as it progressively unfolds in the phenomena of the evolving universes with their manifold groups of living beings. We do not fully comprehend this eternal plan, but the Paradise Son undoubtedly does. Okay,
so the Son basically is the working arm of God the Father then, isn't he? Okay? And these celestial beings that help write this paper don't really understand to the extent of this, and so I guess how are we supposed to, right? It goes quite a ways, from what I understand. Okay, let's keep going. Would you take the next one?
The Son is like the Father in that he seeks to bestow everything possible of himself upon his coordinate sons and upon their subordinate sons, and the Son shares the Father's self-distributive nature and the unstinted bestowal of himself upon the infinite Spirit, their conjoint executive.
Okay, so just like a good corporation and good leaders of corporation, the Son bestows everything possible to his subordinates. Now, who would his subordinates be? That would be the Creator Sons, right? And in conjunction with the conjoint actor, the infinite Spirit, that would include all the ministering spirits too, right? Now, they also mention one other group here, and that is the coordinate sons and their subordinate sons. Who would that be? That would be the Lenonendek sons, right? Melchizedek's, Verondadek sons, material sons and daughters, right? And the life carriers, that would include them, right? He works through them. And who else that I'm leaving out here? A big else. How about us? He works through us, right? So they all work through lower levels of beings, all the way down to us, right?
I guess that's included in the manifold groups of living beings.
And the manifold groups of living beings, right? So it comes from the Father, it works down through the sons, down through all the different beings. Okay. Millie, would you take the next one, please?
As the upholder of spirit realities, the second source and center is the eternal counterpose to the Isle of Paradise, which so magnificently upholds all things material. Thus is the first source and center forever revealed in the material beauty of the exquisite patterns of the central isle and in the spiritual values of the supernal personality of the eternal Son.
Now, think about this. He works counterpose to the Isle of Paradise. What do you think that would be? Because the Isle of Paradise controls all material matter, right? Think about that. And the Son controls what? All spiritual entities, doesn't he? So he's the counterpart to the material. Does that make sense? So they work counterpose to each other. Okay, and they both uphold both the material sources of everything coming from paradise and all the spiritual, gravity circuits. Let me show you all a picture. We're going to talk about this in a minute, but I want to show you all something that's quite interesting. This is the circuits of paradise, okay? And what we're talking about here is this. This is the paradise material gravity circuit. All gravity and all material matter is controlled by paradise through this circuit, right? This is the conjoint actor circuit. This is the mind gravity circuit, okay? This is the sun's circuit. It's the spiritual gravity circuit, okay? And the Father is what? Personality. And that's called a personality gravity circuit. These are the four universal circuits of paradise. Would you like to see the other circuits that involve
Personality, spirituality, mind,
Mind,
and gravity,
gravity,
and material.
Material.
Mindal.
Mindal and material. All right. What else do we have here? This is the 7 super universe circuits. Okay? We have 4 paradise circuits, right? We have 7 super universe circuits. And I don't know if I can read that. Dear, would you read those?
I'll try. First one is the unifying intelligence circuit of one of the 7 master spirits of paradise. Such a cosmic mind circuit is limited to a single super universe.
So this is the intelligence circuit, right? Of the what? The 7 master spirits. Okay? And that's part of what? The cosmic mind. Okay? That's a super universe circuit. And then the next one, the reflective.
The reflective service circuit of the 7 reflective spirits in each super universe.
This is how all the infinite spirits, ministering spirits communicate, isn't it? Over this circuit. Okay? And the next one.
The secret circuits of the mystery monitors, in some manner interassociated and routed by divinington to the universal Father on paradise.
Did you know that the thought adjusters have their own circuit?
No,
Isn't that
it
interesting?
makes sense though, but you know.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's how they communicate. Okay, the next one.
Neat. Okay,
Yeah,
it's hard to see. The circuit of the intercommunication of the eternal Son with his paradise Son.
so there's a separate circuit just for the eternal Son to communicate with all the Creator sons. Okay?
Communion.
Communion.
Yeah,
Yes, it's the intercommunion
with the Paradise
Of-
sons.
of the eternal Son
Of
with his
these-
paradise
yeah.
Sons.
Right. Who's that? Who includes that? That is the Creator sons, the Avonals, and the Danals. Okay? All right. And what's the next one? The flash presence of the infinite spirit. The infinite spirit has a flash presence circuit, so the infinite spirit can know what's going on instantaneously. Okay? The next one, I'll read this since it's hard to read. The broadcast of paradise, the
Space reports.
space reports of Havana. This is the one we were cut off from when we went into quarantine. Okay? The circuit, the space circuits, the broadcast circuits of Havana, we lost communication. So right now we no longer still get that communication. Right? If we did, there's probably someplace we could go and actually watch what's going on in Havana. You follow me? Okay.
Except that we are human and we can't.
That's right. That's right. But the celestial beings could, but they
They
cannot.
don't have the communication.
They don't have the communication either. Okay.
I would say it has nothing to do with us.
Well, no, it does. Supposedly, it does have everything to do with us. Now, on a planet that's close to light and life, those beings would be able to monitor the broadcast, but we're not spiritually there yet. Okay. And the last one.
The energy circuits of the power centers and the physical controllers.
Okay, those are the master physical controllers that control all the matter, right? Okay, so that's the 7 super universe circuits, okay? We have 3 more. Let me get the right mouse again here. We have 3 more. So we have 4 and we have 7 so far, right? We have 3 more. Let's not forget these. These are the local universe circuits, okay? The bestowal spirit of the paradise sons, comforter of the bestowal worlds, the spirit of truth, the spirit of Michael on Urantia. You know, since the spirit of truth was bestowed, this circuit's active on Urantia. Goes through all of us, right? The circuit of the divine minister, the local universe mother spirits, the Holy Spirit of your world. So that's our Holy Spirit circuit. Okay? And last, the intelligence ministry circuit of the local universe, including the diversely functional presence of the adjutant mind spirits. This is closely akin to the what? The Holy Spirit, but it's a separate circuit. And this is the 7 adjutant mind spirits. Now, let me show you something that's really interesting. It's closely akin to what? The cosmic mind circuit. Okay? So we have the super universe influence of the cosmic mind. This is our next step. The cosmic mind takes over from what? The 7 adjutants. When we get to through the mansion worlds, we no longer use the 7 adjutants, we start to use the cosmic mind. You see how these are interrelated? So this is all the circuits of the universe.
That's it right there.
That's it.
Okay.
4, 7, and 3. Oh, Jill's coming? Okay. So that's the circuits of the universe.
I bet you would be interested in seeing that.
I do.
Well, we're going to go, we'll have to show it to you later.
Okay.
Okay. Hey, Jill. Jill, there's your jacket
Hello.
there, too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Where is Linda? I haven't seen her for a while.
Don't know. She just hasn't been in for a while. She's busy with some stuff she's got going on.
Okay.
So, you'll need to call her and talk to her about it. All right. Okay. So now we go back and look at this again. It makes a little bit more sense, doesn't it? Because if we understand that these spirit realities of the second source and center counterpoint to paradise, they're talking about what? The material circuit, right? The gravity circuit. Okay? And then we have what? The spiritual circuit, which is what? The sun. Okay? They're different circuits, but they work together and opposite of each other at the same time. Does that make sense? All right. Let's go on to the next one here. If I can find it. One second. Okay. The eternal sun is the actual upholder of the vast creation of spirit realities and spirit beings. The spirit world is the habit of the personal conduct of the sun. The impersonal realities of spiritual nature are always responsive to the will and purpose of the perfect personality of the absolute Son. So, now we see what they're talking about here, don't we? The spirit realities and spirit beings. We're talking about what again? We're talking about, Jill, I was going to show you, let me show him this picture real quick so that he's not totally lost about what we're talking about. Jill, we just went through these. I'm not going to go through them all again. But we were talking about how there's 4 universe circuits from paradise, okay? We have the Father's personality, the Son's spiritual gravity, the conjoint actor mind gravity circuit, and paradise is the material gravity circuit, okay? We also have 7 circuits, and I'll let you look at these a little bit later, of the super universe. These are the separate dividing circuits of the super universe. They're separate also, okay? And that includes an intelligent circuit of the 7th master spirit, reflective spirit, mystery monitors has their own circuit, the eternal sun to the paradise sons, the flash presence of an infinite spirit, and the paradise space reports from Havona, and the energy circuits of the master physical controllers. Those are the 7 super universe circuits, okay? And locally we have the spirit of truth, which is the spirit of the paradise son and Michael. We have the Holy Spirit. This is of the divine minister and the local universe mother spirit. And we have the intelligence ministry circuit, which includes the 7 adjutant mind circuits.
What about the archangel circuit that we have here?
That's part of the
Divine ministry?
the divine minister circuits. Well, actually, it's actually part of this, the reflectivity circuit, right?
Okay.
Right there. See this?
Okay.
That's really part of that.
But it's based here, but even though it's a super universe.
Well, it's not really based here. It's got a what would you call a outpost here?
Oh,
Okay, it would be based out of probably the Spiranington is probably where it's based at, but it's a local thing. You know, we're very special to have a base here on this planet. Okay,
We have all of those circuits in our super universe. Another super universe will have the same thing,
same exact circuits,
but not ours. They'll have
but
their
not,
own
or
circuit.
they'll have their own. For every master spirit, every one of the 7 master spirits, it's a separate entity. So what you can think of is this. The paradise circuits, the 4 paradise circuits, go out in 4 spokes to all 7 of the super universes, right? Or 4 things. 4 to each 7 super universe, right? But the others, like the local universe, they would start where? They would start at the master spirit and go out from there. The 7 spokes would start at our super universe level and go out to only our our super universe, right? And they would do that for each and every of the 7 super universes. You follow me? So you'd have 7 spokes that start at the master spirit and just cover just our local super universe. Okay? Now, the local stuff, okay, that would start from where? It would start from, like the circuit of the sun, actually comes from paradise, but it spreads out from where? From Michael and the local universe mother spirit. So you can think of that going a straight line from paradise to Michael or to Salvington, and then it spreads out from there, right? All 3 of the Spirit of Truth, the Holy Spirit, and the 7 adjutant mind spirits, right? That makes sense? If you get that picture in your mind, you've covered all the spiritual circuits, less the angelic circuit, which is really part of the 7 super universes circuits, right? Okay. Let's keep moving. You take the next one.
The Son is not, however, personally responsible for the conduct of all spirit personalities. The will of the personal creature is relatively free, and hence determines the actions of such volitional beings. Therefore, the free will spirit world is not always truly representative of the character of the eternal Son, even as nature on Urantia is not truly revelatory of the perfection and immutability of paradise and deity. But no matter what may characterize the free will action of man or angel, the Son's eternal grasp of the universal gravity control of all spirit realities continues as absolute.
Okay, so do we understand what he's saying here? Because of free will choice, even though the will of the Son reigns, it's because we all have free will. It may not go exactly the way the Son would prefer, just like nature does not go exactly the way that paradise would prefer, right? The grasp of material things. We have what? We have freaks of nature, we have disasters and things like that. That's not what? That's not part of the will of God. Those are disasters of nature.
Well. Don't you think there are the potential for those disasters was actually planned, and it's part of evolution to challenge us a little bit? Because
That is possible, Gilles. It is possible. But I think it's more of what they talk about in the book is accidents of time. And I think the accidents of time are part of the process. In other words, I wouldn't say they're planned, but they happen according to the laws of God. In other words, the laws of the the way evolution is set up.
Right.
Right.
Because if you go into the jungle and you meet the lion is going to eat you.
Who's gonna
Or
eat
if you get stung by a tarantula, you are likely
You're
to
gonna
get in
die.
trouble, right?
Yeah.
And all that was known at the time those things were designed the way they were.
That's
So doesn't mean that a specific scorpion stinging a specific person was planned ahead of time for the purpose of being mean,
Right.
but the fact that those were hostile conditions
Yeah.
and the fact that we had to fight to feed our stomach, right?
Yeah.
I think that was definitely done on purpose.
But I don't think it was how do I put this? I don't think it's a free will act. It's a act of the physical nature of God. In other words, it's an act of, God set up the plan that this body, really the Creator Son set up the plan that these universes would evolve on their own, and in the process of that evolving on their own, we're going to have earthquakes, we're going to have tsunamis, we're going to have hurricanes, things like that, because it's just the nature of the planet. But I don't think there's will involved in that we're going to make it happen here or
Right.
there
I agree.
or that sort of thing, But I think where free will comes into it is this. We as human beings, through educating ourselves, we can find out what's most likely to happen where and that sort of thing. And through free will, we could manipulate ourselves to avoid these things.
And intelligence, yes.
Intelligence,
Yes.
free will, right? So it's a dual-edged sword, really. Free will's involved in the fact that we stay in these places, or we go to the jungle and we experience these things, or we don't, right?
Survival of the fittest would prevent an idiot from walking into the jungle and talking to a lion.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
He
think
would
how-
get eaten, so he would not reproduce more idiots.
That's right.
Then you think about these people who just got smothered in the mudslide in California.
Mhm.
If they were smart, they wouldn't be living there. They already know
The
of
danger.
other areas that are cracking open and mud's going to slide, but these people just want to live there.
Uh-huh.
But that's harsh because we live in an area where there are hurricanes and tornadoes, and if tomorrow you die because your house gets torn up by a tornadoes, I think that would be harsh to say, well, those people over there in Georgia, they knew that they were in tornado area.
Yeah.
How stupid are they to live in Georgia, right? That's a little bit rough also. But
It works almost everywhere, doesn't
right,
it?
You've
yeah.
got to live
You
somewhere.
gotta live somewhere, and I don't know. I know
I
that
have
when,
a basement.
I know that a place I come from there are risk of earthquakes. Same in California, and there was actually recently a fairly major earthquake with no major death and damages, but it was shaking and we know that, and I grew up there, and I was lucky that I was at the time. I've never experienced a major one where the house destroyed and fell upon me, but it could have happened. The same way it could happen.
Well,
in
it
the
could
other-
happen anywhere.
It could happen-
Really, Georgia's built across the fault. There's a big fault. that
We've
goes-
had some earthquakes recently in the last
Yeah.
couple of weeks.
Yeah, we
I
did.
didn't
But-
feel them,
but it's
they
inactive.
advertised on
But our intelligence comes in as a society to build houses that we know the techniques
Yeah.
for houses not to crumble if there is an earthquake, and
Yeah.
that we can do. That's part of our intelligence
Well-
as a society to make that happen.
And the
But
same
then
thing
to
about Earth.
have a basement if
Yeah.
you're in a tornado.
Tornadoes, that's
They-
right.
Out
Exactly.
in the Midwest where they have flood and tornado, they have storm cellars. I mean, they're built
Yeah.
for the storms
Right.
because they know that.
Exactly.
So they
Exactly.
build the storm cellars.
So that's when that free will comes in and knowing what to do. The other thing is interesting too. I always like to bring this back, and that is, God did not guarantee you a life full of free from disaster. He experiences that disaster with you, though, doesn't he? Through the thought adjuster. So whatever struggles you go through, and whatever kind of disasters you go through, God the Father is right there with you through the adjuster. So He's not going to keep you from being in it, but He's going to go through it with you and give you the spiritual support that you need to make it through it. Which is an interesting concept too.
And I'm sure he encourages us to build cellars.
Oh yeah,
Whenever
That's how he-
possible to have some
That's how
kind.
he experiences life.
that's
He
right.
doesn't come down here and run through it with us. He experiences it through
Through
us,
us.
whatever we're doing
That's right.
or not doing.
Okay. I'm going to walk from there. The spirit gravity circuit. We were just talking about this, weren't we? Now you have a pretty good idea of what we're talking about here. When we say the spirit gravity circuit, we're talking about what? We're talking about this, right? And that's a paradise-based circuit. Okay? So let's go back here. Who's next?
I believe it's me. Okay. Everything taught concerning the immanence of God, His omnipresence, omnipotence, and omniscience is equally true of the Son in the spiritual domains, the pure and universal spirit gravity of all creation. This exclusive spiritual circuit leads directly back to the persons of the second source and center on paradise. He presides over the control and operation of that ever-present and unerring spiritual grasp of all true spirit values. Thus does the Eternal Son exercise absolute spiritual sovereignty. He literally holds all spiritual reality and all spiritualized values, as it were, in the hollow of his hand. The control of the universal spiritual gravity is universal spiritual sovereignty.
Okay, so when we're talking about the spirit gravity circuit, we're really talking about the Son, right? It goes out to all, just like God the Father's paradise or personality circuit. Everything having to do with the Spirit comes back to the Son, directly from the Son of God, the second person of deity, and that makes him absolute as far as spirit goes, right? And that's why it says he has the absolute spiritual sovereignty. Only he holds that. Okay? Now how does he work through that though? It's through his sons, right? His creator sons and his paradise sons. Okay. Jill, would you take the next one? This gravity control?
This gravity control of spiritual things operates independently of time and space. Therefore is spirit energy undiminished in transmission. Spirit gravity never suffers time delays, nor does it undergo space diminution. It does not decrease in accordance with the square of the distance of its transmission. The circuits of pure spirit power are not retarded by the mass of the material creation. And this transcendence of time and space by pure spirit energies is inherent in the absoluteness of the Son. It is not due to the interposition of the anti-gravity forces of the third source and center.
Okay, I don't know if y'all remember this. Few weeks we talked about all these circuits and how far they go out. Do you remember that? And if you remember, the spirit gravity circuit percentage used is 100% all the way out to the edges of the seven super universe. Do you remember that? So 100% of the spirit gravity is used all the way out to the edge of the seven super universes. Out in the outer space levels, almost no percentage is used. And that's because why? There's no spirit beings out there yet. Okay? The beings that are out there, that's putting all these together and that sort of thing, are beings of what? God the Father, right? And His workings. So it's not necessary. But soon as there's a being goes out to any of these seven super universes, what happens? The spirit gravity circuit expands out there. Now, we can't think of it as this. We can't think of the spirit gravity circuit. When you get out to the edge of the universe, it's less of a circuit. It's not. It's 100% all the way out to the edges where it is. So even though we're 250 million light years from paradise or from Havona, it's not diminished whatsoever from where it originates all the way to here. None. So there's just as much spiritual gravity here as there is if you were standing in paradise.
So with the outer areas it would actually, just move farther
It
out.
moves out.
Just from within, it moves
From
farther
within,
out.
it moves out. With non-diminishment, that's the important thing. Okay? It does not diminish, and that's what they're talking about here. It never suffers time delays or undergoes space diminution. That's what they're talking about. It gets less as you go out. It does not do that. Okay?
But when it does, it comes from within, it just expands.
Yeah, it just expands. It's just as strong on the outside of the universe, or the edge of the universe, as it is in the center of the universe. Okay? All right. And that's what they're talking about, does not retarded by the mass of the material creation. And it won't be as we go out to the outer space levels either. Okay. Millie? I think you're next.
Spirit realities respond to the drawing power of the center of spiritual gravity in accordance with their qualitative value, the actual degree of spirit nature. Spirit substance or quality is just as responsive to spirit gravity as the organized energy of physical matter, quantity, is responsive to physical gravity. Spiritual values and spirit force are real. From the viewpoint of personality, spirit is the soul of creation. Matter is the shadow physical body. Shadowy physical body.
That's right. So what they're saying here is the material gravity does have what? Diminution, doesn't it? It gets less in certain areas. And so that's why the planets have something to do with material gravity, right? The suns have something to do with the material gravity. The gravity circuit of paradise has to do it. So all these different things. And this is why also we have what? Dark islands of space. It helps balance out the material gravity circuits. You see the difference of what they're talking about here? But they go on to say that spirit is more real than the physical. Isn't that interesting? That's something to ponder at night when you're lying in bed, isn't it? All right, let's keep moving. The reactions and fluctuations of spirit gravity are never true to the content of spiritual values, are ever true, to the content of spiritual values, the qualitative spiritual status of an individual or a world. The drawing power is instantaneously responsive to the inter and intra-spirit values in any universe situation or planetary condition. Every time a spiritual reality actualizes in the universe, this change necessitates the immediate and instantaneous readjustment of spirit gravity. Such a new spirit is actually a part of the second source and center. And just as certainly as mortal man becomes a spiritized being, it will attain the spiritual sun, the center and the source of spirit gravity. And what they're talking about here is the ascension plan, aren't they?
Every time a spiritual reality actualizes, what does that mean?
That means as we go from a third stage Morancha being to a first stage spirit, that's what they're talking about. We have a new, spiritual being that comes into
Then
existence.
this change necessitates the immediate and instantaneous readjustment of spirit gravity.
Yep.
There's one more spirit.
One more spirit. Right. Makes sense? As we go through the ascension plan, after we die, right? And we go from Morancha through our many Morancha states, then we get to what? As soon as we leave Salvington, we become what? A first stage spirit. And at that point, the spirit gravity has to be readjusted, right? Because we're going from a Morancha type being to a spiritual being.
So it's always in constant flux.
It's always in constant flux. Okay?
It's hard to conceive of something so vast and knowing that I am so minute in this vastness. Everything's going to change because I do something.
Yeah.
You know, every time I change something around in my house, I feel totally different about my house. Every single little thing that I do, whether I put a lamp in a different place or a different wattage, light in my lamp. I mean, it is. I can see the parallel there in a very,
And think about it this way. Every individual is unique, right? And this is part of the uniqueness of the universe, if you think about it. When we lose one being, when one person does not survive, that uniqueness of that person affects the whole mass. It does, because that person or that spiritual part of that person will not will not come into full fruition, will it? The adjuster has to find another vehicle to go on, doesn't it?
but doesn't the Supreme
Absorbs it.
absorbs it, and then doesn't that balance it out somehow to keep an equilibrium?
It does, but the uniqueness of that individual is forever lost. That's the tragedy of suicide, if you think about it. Because that uniqueness of that individual is never reinstated. You see what I'm saying? So, as we become spirits, because of your uniqueness, it affects everything in the pond. It's like a drop of water in the ocean. You think it's not anything, but really it is. It takes a lot of drops of water to make an ocean. So we're kind of spiritual drops of water in the spiritual ocean. And the more that we lose of that, people who do not survive, the worse off we are. So that's why, when Jesus used to say, it's amazing, he'll tell his apostles, let's go out and save some souls, right? He was serious. He wanted to make sure every single individual on the planet survived for that next step, didn't he? If you think about it.
By what you said about suicide, you're assuming that every single person that commits suicide is no longer involved in this.
We don't know that, do we?
No, but I just wanted to say that that's
Yeah.
a possibility. There are other merciful
Yeah, we don't know
things.
that. There's some reasons that suicide would be justified, wouldn't it? And I hate to call it suicide. Now, it says in the Urantia book and the Bible both that when you give your life instead of another person, that's the greatest love you can have for another man. And in essence, you're stepping in front of a bullet or a bomb or something like that. That is a form of suicide, but we don't like to call it that. But that's the greatest gift you can give to another person, is to give your life for them, right? So I don't put that in the same category. I would be talking about suicide that people do it for selfish reasons.
Do you think euthanasia is suicide for a selfish reason?
No,
I
you're
don't
done.
think so.
You're done. No,
Personally, I don't think
the question
so.
I would have is someone who commits suicide because he's depressed. Is
Yeah.
depression the result of that decision from depression? Is it a true decision that is final, or because of the emotional state that is not ideal, then it's taken into consideration and the true decision will come? You have another opportunity once you have corrected those.
Well, that would be considered a mental illness too, wouldn't it? If you think about it. If you're that depressed that you would take your own life, it really is a mental illness. And, those sort of things, I don't think we're in the place to even judge. I mean,
We don't know. I think we don't know.
We don't know.
The same way, I think, when you make when you said that a personality that doesn't survive, either by making the decision or never having achieved the requirement for survival, whatever way, is lost forever. We know that personally doesn't continue on the way the others do, but do we know for sure that that unique personality will? We know it goes back to the spiritual gravity of the
It
Father.
goes back to the Supreme.
But then,
Yeah.
and the Supreme. But do we know that that's the end of the road for?
Yeah.
For sure?
According to your book, it's the end of the road. It's reabsorbed in the Supreme.
Yeah, but when it's reabsorbed, what does it mean? How does
Well,
it?
it states in there never to be used again.
Oh, it does say that.
Yeah,
Okay.
something along that line. I don't know the exact wording, but basically it says that once it's absorbed in the Supreme, the experience of that life, is absorbed in the experience, the experiential part of the Supreme, but that uniqueness of that individual never starts again.
But
Why
could there be another uniqueness that is actually exactly the same that would be given by the spiritual father in another life?
No. Let me tell you why. Because the thought adjuster leaves those people. And the thought adjuster is the personality record of that person. So that personality of that person goes with the thought adjuster. And the thought adjuster will do what? He will be reassigned to another individual.
Right, for continuing on.
For continuing
But
on,
what about
so-
getting another thought adjuster with another replica of that personality in another environment to give a chance of that particular uniqueness to actually grow, as opposed to not grow because of the circumstances
Not
of it?
according to your answer book.
Unless then that may mean then that personality, that uniqueness has no chance then, because of the way it is, it's basically kind of flawed, if I may say that way, and could not
No,
make
because
it.
no, you're missing the point that the personality of that person or the lessons of that person stays with the thought adjuster. So the thought adjuster, when that thought adjuster goes to a new person, the experience of the lessons of that person stays with the thought adjuster, and eventually those lessons will benefit whom? The new person.
Right. No, I'm not missing that. I'm
yeah.
perfectly aware of that.
Yeah.
What the point is, with that unicity, whatever is different between every single personality and the unicity that it represents, which I wouldn't be able to describe that and understand that, but whatever that is, I'm wondering, and the answer may be no, but I'm just personally wondering
Yeah.
whether it is possible that the father takes another personality that is exactly the same as one that didn't survive, and another thought adjuster, but now of course they're going to be in a different environment. So and that hopefully will be better suited for that specific personality to actually fructify to the point of survival.
That may be the case, but the point is the consciousness of that individual is gone. It would
Yes.
be a whole new consciousness. You follow me?
Right, but
Yeah, because-
possibly then
and it would be like a clone. If you cloned a
it
human
would be like a
being,
clone. You would be like a
Yeah,
clone. Yes.
yeah. If you cloned a human being from the time that clone was created, it would have a new set of personality. I mean, a new set of experiences from that moment of
Right.
life.
Which
right?
we,
And so it would be unique at that point, wouldn't it?
which bring another question then: are we really every single personality in the universe distinct from the other? In other words, does it exist two personalities that are actually cloned in terms of personality, not in terms of experience, in
Yeah.
terms of source of personality that are cloned of each other?
No.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
either. It's a question.
Yeah.
I wonder.
I don't know, because you think of the thought adjusters. The thought adjusters are all identical when they go to Dominican, From Dominican, they're trained from Dominican, and once they've gone out for the very first bestowal into a person, they become unique
In terms of experience.
from the experience as well.
So we're definitely all unique in terms of our experience.
Yeah.
We end up therefore all unique in terms of the experience of our thought adjuster and our soul. Then the question is, are we really unique in terms of personality?
Yeah, but the whole point, though, I was making about suicide is this. It's unfair, number one, to the thought adjuster, because it's put so much effort and time into making you who you are. But it's selfish for all those around you, because the experience they get is sadness and despair and all sorts of feelings, negative feelings from knowing you and you killing yourself. So it's really a very selfish act to cut your life
It
short.
isn't selfish though, if you say when you deal with individual circumstances, say you have a baby that is either sacrificed or that a parent or a relative or someone abuses that baby, and then that baby grows up and is depressed, and it never does actually able to make the.
Yeah, but we've already talked about that. That would
But I'm
be.
talking about the eternal Son is total mercy and compassion.
Mhm.
And it seems to me that, we all come from different environments, different set of circumstances, and sometimes it's really hard. Many people that don't succeed in suicide continue to live and everything, but there are many that do take themselves.
Yeah, but see, that is part of the struggle of life. There's no justification for taking your own life.
Okay, well, I disagree with you, but,
Yeah.
Well, a situation on that, we could look at these teachers that go to these different areas where it's really ghettos, you know, and the students, when you first go in there, are just, you know, they're used to getting shot at and everything else, and
Mhm.
yet he finds a way to connect with them, you know, and
Yeah.
bring them out of that environment. So they take a special care, and a lot of them never get that special care, you know. So even though they do have the potential, if they aren't handled properly, they'll never realize that potential.
But
you
it
know?
does tell us in the Urantia book that there is no circumstance on earth whatsoever, no circumstance, and no matter how bad it is or anything else, that will not allow you to survive. No.
That's true, okay, but what it is, instead of us saying it's all your fault, it's really up to us to make sure they get what's necessary
that's
to
part of-
bring them out.
That's part of the brotherhood
Yes,
of man.
okay, you know, it's
That's
up
part
to
of the
us to
brotherhood of man.
recognize
Yeah.
that this is a group of people that needs a
Needs
special
special
attention and care.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's our job, as you said, to do it.
Yeah, it's our job,
Yep.
instead of
It-
just
it's
shucking
not
them
only our
away and
job, it's
saying
our
it's up to you.
responsibility.
That's
Yeah,
right. And there's a
uh-huh.
lot of work to do.
Yeah, it takes a lot more
work.
effort, a lot more, you know, a lot more goes into it instead of just pushing it to the
Well, see,
side.
and part of the training for life that I think we miss out on, I don't want to get too far away from this, but part of the training we miss out on life is training our children and people that we help grow up to identify when your mindset is getting close to that breaking point, and knowing when to ask for help. Because many of these people go through life and you don't know anything's wrong with them. You know, they get you know, depressed and that sort of thing. And part of the training we need to put out is to teach young people how to identify, I have a real problem, and at that point go to someone who they can discuss that with. You know, which should be a parent or a friend or something along that line. But we need to train these children and people how to do this. Instead of considering killing yourself, let's find a solution to these problems. Let's see what you can change to get out of this situation. You know, let's see what we can do to get over this depression. You know, and it's not always drugs. You know, I mean, everybody thinks they can put their kids on drugs and it's going to work out. Many times, that's not what's needed at all. You know, sometimes these kids need to be trained, you know, and shown another way, to be given hope, and that's part of what we're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely, but in the
Yeah.
first place, people are in such situation because they don't get it.
Yeah.
In the first place, like, think about
Yeah.
those kids in the ghettos and things like that. So they are going to have access to the guns and the violence and the drugs, and not to the spiritual teacher to guide them.
That's
And
right.
that's the point in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's just our evolving as a society, you know. Before we've always just said, tough, you figure it out, you know. And now we're seeing, wait a minute, that ain't the way to handle it, you
And we got a
know.
long
We
way
were
to go.
building jails for them before. Now we
right.
got to say, wait a minute, that's not the way to handle it, you
Yeah.
know. And you know, that's just, you know, the stages we're going to go through as we're growing.
It's a growth process.
Yeah, when we start accepting the responsibility of all that,
Yeah.
you know, and saying, really, that's, you know, somehow I got to do something, some
Yeah.
way, you know.
All right, let's go on. Did we already cover this? Yeah, I think we did. Dear, would you take that?
The sun's spiritual drawing power is inherent to a lesser degree in many paradise orders of sonship. For there do exist within the absolute spirit gravity circuit those local systems of spiritual attraction that function in the lesser units of creation. Such sub-absolute vocalizations of spirit gravity are a part of the divinity of the creator personalities of time and space, and are correlated with the emerging experiential over-control of the Supreme Being.
Who are we talking about there? Creator sons, right? The creator sons and their interaction and living within the emergence of the experience of the Supreme Being, right? So it's through these creator sons that this spiritual gravity emits. Does that make sense? You know, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. That's what they're talking about, right? I need about 3 more hands on this here.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to take the next one?
Okay. Spirit gravity, pull and response, thereto operate not only on the universe as a whole, but also even between individuals and groups of individuals. There is a spiritual cohesiveness among the spiritual and spiritualized personalities of any world, race, nation, or believing group of individuals. There is direct attractiveness of a spirit nature between spirituality-minded persons of like taste and longings. The term kindred spirits is not wholly a figure of speech.
So we have that spiritual gravity between each other, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
And we have that spiritual gravity between the group, don't we? And multiple groups in our life. So any one person can have thousands and thousands of spiritual gravity groups that they're involved with, can't they? Different groups. You probably have one that you work with. You may have one that you play with. You meet at McDonald's and talk to guides. That's another gravity circuit. When you meet for your religious meetings, that's another gravity circuit, right? These are all part of the spiritual gravity circuit. Kindred spirits, all controlled by what? The sun.
Now there's the part in the Bible where I believe it's like God's going to have a race where I guess they're more spiritually to each other. Is that the situation? Where he's going to create a generation, you know, like after the ones that were in the desert, then he created another generation that followed him. Isn't that supposed to be another part of this?
No,
where-
you're talking about the age of light and life. When we reach the age of light and life, many, many things change. And one of those things that change is the reaction between people, because it's more like a utopian type society.
Okay.
All right, that's when we reach the age of light and life. But that doesn't happen till when we all this barbarian starts to come out of us. You know,
Okay.
we're not even in the ballpark right now. You know, you see that from the TV or movies that we watch, right? So that's really what they're talking about. In that
We're in a transitional period, though.
We're definitely in a transition.
Kind of at a point of saying this just can't continue like this. Something's got to change.
Well, it
you
hasn't
know?
it hadn't met critical mass yet. In other words, there's millions of people know that we need to change things, but critical mass hadn't got to the point where we've acted enough to make the changes that would make things better.
Mhm.
Yeah. And who knows how long that will take. You know, we've come a long way in the last 100 years.
Yeah.
You know. All right. Who's up next? I think you're up next, aren't
It's me.
Yeah, I just read it, right?
Oh, okay. Jill.
Like the material gravity of paradise, the spiritual gravity of the eternal Son is absolute. Sin and rebellion may interfere with the operation of local universe circuits, but nothing can suspend the spirit gravity of the eternal Son. The Lucifer rebellion produced many changes in your system of inhabited worlds and on Urantia, but we do not observe that the resultant spiritual quarantine of your planet in the least affected the presence and function of either the omnipresent spirit of the eternal Son or the associated spirit gravity circuit.
Did y'all catch that? That the quarantine, the spiritual quarantine that we're in, did not affect in the least the presence of the sun in our local universe. Okay. So even though we're quarantined, it still did not affect our participation in this gravity circuit, right? All these things remain constant.
But the question that comes to my mind when I read that, or all of that, whether it's this part, probably this part, but what is the practical impact of those spiritual circuits in our lives? what does it mean, and what does it mean if it was not there? I mean, we have a sense of some of, like for example, some of the circuits we are not connected to, based on reading the Urantia book, that gives us a sense about what we are missing. I see it as we are missing like a TV report about the universe kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
To be very rough kind of things.
Yeah.
But all those influences, like we have the Mother Spirit, the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of Truth, the Spirit of the Son, I mean, all those that you have listed, right? You know, personally, in my personal life, they are there, I'm sure, I hope.
Yeah.
I hope they are active, but
Yeah.
you know, I don't sense the difference of what those are.
Well, the reason we don't sense much of a difference of what goes on is because of the resurrection of Christ. You know, because we've got the Holy Spirit, we've got our the Spirit of Truth, we've got all these influences that's been poured out on us since Pentecost, right? So really, we've made up any lack that we had, even though we're in quarantine, from all these other spiritual influences. So really, you probably wouldn't sense that much difference. But let me give you an example of something where you might. If you were in a different time, if you were on this planet before Pentecost and living in the period of time after Adam and Eve and before Christ, and maybe even before Melchizedek, the world was warring constantly, okay? And that spiritual brotherhood was probably affected. In other words, part of the problem with all this warring going on and how we treated one another and all that, we didn't have those influences. Okay, so probably it made us even more barbaric, but we don't have the benefit of knowing that. But that's what I would say probably the difference was, because right after Pentecost, the Spirit was poured out with the Spirit of Truth and the Holy Spirit, right? And so we're bathed in these other influences constantly. It almost seems to me it is almost stupidity in life not to try to connect into these spiritual forces. It's just the opposite of what it should be. And to see so many people running around with no interest in God or religion or anything is almost incomprehensible to me, because I know about these circuits and I know that we're bathed with all these things. And I feel the influence of these things daily in my own life.
Can you make the difference? Can you differentiate when you think about your emotion and what goes on in your mind and your ideas and your plans? And can you make the difference? Okay, well, this is thought adjuster. This is the Holy Spirit. Or this is the Spirit of Truth. Oh yeah, no, that's the circuit of the Son. Can you sense?
You can't sense I don't think anybody can sense the difference between the two, because
all those. Yeah.
The adjuster is influence from within, telling us this is the way. The Spirit of Truth is an influence from without. Okay, so that's trying to guide us constantly.
Right, but all that is words. In practice, what does it mean?
I think, personally, okay, this is just my opinion. I think for me, it's these spiritual influences that controls the rage in my life. And so what the heck is he talking about? Life is frustrating because we have so many different influences all the time. So eventually, when you start to get older like we are, maybe with you for an exception.
I wish.
As you get older, you have two, I feel like this is the way it is, you have two mindsets. One where you're totally at peace all the time. Life is just, if it got any better, you couldn't stand it, And other times when you see what's going on you and you have all these things going on in your life and all these influences that are bad, it just makes you rageful. In other words, you want to just go out and scream, This is not the way it's supposed to be. And it doesn't have to be that way, but we allow those negative, evil influences in our life to affect us. And that's why I call it rage. It's the rage against evil. That's the only thing I can think of. And I feel that too. I go sometimes, even getting busy around here. I mean, Diane knows this. When I get working on stuff, I'm concentrating. I got to get this done. All these things aren't important. But at the moment, they seem like the most important thing in the world, don't they? You know, I got to get this. I got to do this. Got to do that. Why don't I have enough money? Why don't I? You know, we all go through these things, and that's part of the rage of the evil because we want to live in this world instead of live in a spiritual concept, right? It's not being able to let go of this world, and that's the difference I think I feel. When we let our own will get at a check, then the influences in our life can't come through to talk to us.
All right, so let me ask you another question then, or ask anyone else, right? Speaking of living in a spiritual world versus this, I think there is several parts in the book where it says there is also a danger to be over spiritualized
There is.
and not live enough in this world.
Become fanatical.
Could we become fanatic or
Yeah.
lose sense of reality?
Lose sense of reality.
And in my personal life, I feel like, you know, I wouldn't be balanced and effective as I can be. And as a matter of fact, I'm not as effective as I can be. It could be because of spiritual components. But for me, I don't think that's the bottleneck, right? I think the balance has to do with also your life and the way you lead your life and the money and the leisure
Yeah.
and the social aspect and the physical aspect and the nourishment. I mean, the whole gamut. All of these, I mean, are in many ways not much to do with spirituality.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, in food and physical exercise and hygiene and being able to talk to some people. Now, when you talk to some people, hopefully there's a little bit of a spiritual component in it. You make it meaningful. But a lot of those things are just, and I think if you detach yourself from that, you are not going to be at the top of the world for yourself, right?
Yeah.
So
When you live in this world instead of living spiritual, your happiness is going to be less. That's all there is to it. I
when
mean,
you what? I repeat again.
when you live in the material world, when you live in the secular world without the spiritual, your life is not going to be as happy and fulfilled. By
But
any
if you live in the
stretch of the
spiritual world and completely disregarding the
Everything is in moderation. You can't live in a totally spiritual world without knowing, especially in this planet, because we got so much evil around us. You have to keep up certain barriers. Okay, what I'm talking about is you have to protect yourself from what's going on around you, because if you don't protect yourself from what's going around you, you'll be sucked right into the evil, the discontent, and the bad attitudes, all the things that's going on in the world around you. So it's the spiritual life that allows you to do everything in moderation. That's the whole trick of life, you know, is to keep balance, right? Now, as heralds of this book, depends on what role you take. If you're an apostle of God, it's your requirement to live in the spiritual world and bring up the spiritual world as much as humanly possible. That's what Jesus did with the apostles, didn't he? I mean, they lived a spiritual life. And as a teacher, that is your responsibility to try to live as close to that spiritual life as possible. But you have to be as wise as serpents and what? As harmless as doves.
yeah.
You have to have that serpent wiseness because of the evil that's out there in the world. Because if you don't, this world will take advantage of you and walk right over you.
Right, but Jesus was not, you know, sitting in a chair and saying, "Oh, the love of God is so great,
No.
oh, so good," and
He
24
got
hours a
out
day
and
like
did
that.
things, didn't
He
he?
was working. He was raising children. He suffered financial issues. Then he worked through them. Then he
Just like we did.
traveled, and then he did all that. And
Yeah.
all of that was very practical.
Okay, but the difference is he didn't have fear, doubt, and confusion. He always had his faith in God, and then he did his work with his hands. When you're in the material world, you're always fearful of, oh, what if, and have doubts about that, and you're all confused about this. So, you know, it's connecting with the Word, it's connecting with God, and then you do your worldly work, you know. But it's that fear, doubt, and confusion that you want to run out of your mind.
Yeah.
Okay, that's where you want to be at peace and rest and do your work. That's all. All the rest of it is just garbage that you're throwing on your own table and then wondering why I can't eat it. You
It's
know?
noise, right? It's background noise is what it is.
Yeah, that's all it is, you know, and you can rule that out with your studies. That's what they're there for, is to show you how to transform that mind into the God mindset that Jesus has taught us.
And not,
Living in
not many people want to do that either.
And living in the past allows you to get to dwell in depression and sadness. And living in the future gives you anxiety if you're too anxious about things in the world. But when you are totally present, that's where peace is. And so when you're working in a peaceful manner, you're totally focused on your work. When you're with your family, you're totally focused on your family. You know, but that's very difficult to maintain that balance, that equilibrium.
Yes, it is. You got to watch inside, you know, and not have so much attention on the outside is what it boils down to. You're just constantly monitoring every thought you have, because that's where your real abilities are at anyways. And then when you look at it, all you're really wanting is peace and rest. So if you can control that through your mind, you're out here in the material. I need money, I need this, I need this, I need that. What for? For peace and rest. No, you can have that right now.
And that's what
So,
I
you know, go for the peace and rest that you're trying to get from a material world, and then deal with your material world.
And that's what I was talking about, the rage of life. You know, you let too much of the outside come in.
That's it.
You let the rage of life. It's craziness.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it is.
It'll drive you nuts.
Drive you crazy.
You know.
All right, let's keep going. Okay, did we read this? Yes, we did. Okay. All right. All right. Let me go one more here. Sorry, y'all. Went off on a tangent there.
Okay.
I don't remember who's supposed to read now.
I should be the one to be sorry. It's my fault.
Billy, would you take that next paragraph? I don't know where we are, but you can take up the next.
All reactions of the spirit gravity circuit of the grand universe are predictable. We recognize all actions and reactions of the omnipresent spirit of the eternal Son and find them to be dependable. In accordance with well-known laws, we can and do measure spiritual gravity just as man attempts to compute the workings of the finite physical gravity. There is an unvarying response of the Son's spirit to all spirit things, beings, and persons, and this response is always in accordance with the degree of actuality, the qualitative degree of reality of all such spiritual values.
They talk about it like it's a palpable circuit, don't they? Like it's.
It's like your soul, they put it on a scale and
That's
there
right.
it is.
It's
And
got
they
weight.
do that in terms of reaction. So it's not like a static scale in terms
Yeah.
of the dynamic action that's going on
That's
in
right.
those circuits that I was.
So it's a very real thing, but it's not. It says just as man contempts to compute the workings of the finite physical gravity, which we do, the spiritual gravity works the same way. It's
Right.
just on a different reality, right?
But that's so the
We don't see it.
We don't see it.
so who's writing this? Is it a divine counselor? So
Divine
divine
counselors.
counselors can detect that.
Yeah,
Sounds like we cannot.
right. Not in this life. Probably not until we get closer to the spiritual realm ourselves.
Well, I think we can probably get an educated guess.
Well,
It is
they say we
kind of
can-
rough.
Well, they say we can, we can feel the gravity circuit with each other and with individuals and with groups and things. So we know it's there. It's just whether we discern it that closely. I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because I think we can, sometimes I'm with some people, when I'm with some people, a group of people who are spiritually inclined, I can sense something, and when I'm with those who are not at all, I make the difference. So not to that level, but I think we all,
Yeah.
there is something along those lines.
Like
that-
this little
that-
meter goes off. the
Right,
back of your
it's like,
brain, yeah.
now our meters is based on words and it's
Yeah.
probably not based on the eternal sun reaction to the
Yeah.
spiritual reaction, but so it's much more rough, it's rougher, but we get a little sense of, so this speaks, right? I can make an analogy in our life of what that means.
Yeah.
I can feel negative energies from people. There are people that are in their presence and don't want to be there.
Just emit that energy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just have to go away from this person.
Yeah.
My wife, who was working at a nearby jail that I had the pleasure to visit for a few days, she was telling me that one day she met some of the inmates as a social worker, and once she went, one of those guys was a murderer and in a tower secluded and all that stuff, and she was like whoa, she felt the
Yeah.
void in the eyes, and just by the guy was totally like emotionless. She could feel that he would be the kind of guy who could kill anyone just like that, cold-blooded, and not feel anything about it, not having any remorse. And she said, I could feel it. Or did I tell you also the example of Hitler? I think last time I might have shared the example of Hitler. A coworker of mine who was telling her grandfather actually met Hitler, and he was like, whoa. So that definitely.
I don't get it that strongly, but I definitely get negative energies from certain people. Yeah. I know what your wife was talking about.
And hopefully the positive as well.
Yes. Well, I don't not feel I don't feel negative. I don't necessarily feel positive, except that I'm comfortable. When I'm comfortable, that's positive.
Yeah.
When I'm not comfortable,
All right.
that's the negative comes in.
Let's go on. But alongside this very dependable and predictable function of the spirit presence of the eternal Son, there are encountered phenomena which are not so predictable in their reactions. Such phenomena probably indicates the coordinate action of the deity absolute in the realms of the emerging spiritual potentials. We know that the spirit presence of the eternal Son is the influence of the majestic and infinity personality, but we hardly regard the reactions associated with the conjectured performances of the excuse me, deity absolute as personal. So what do we know about the deity absolute? The deity absolute's out in the outer space levels, right? But apparently this deity absolute also functions within this universe in some way.
That's much harder to
It's a harder
understand now,
concept
that part.
to
I mean,
get. That's right.
to have an analogy, I guess, in our world, in our
Yeah.
lives.
In our world, it functions also, which is hard for us to even comprehend.
That's right. Yeah, this I don't feel it as well as the previous paragraph.
Yeah. Yeah. You take the next one?
Viewed from the personality standpoint and by persons, the eternal Son and the deity absolute appear to be related in the following way. The eternal Son dominates the realm of actual spiritual values, whereas the deity absolute seems to pervade the vast domain of potential spirit values. All actual value of spirit nature finds lodgment in the gravity grasp of the eternal Son, but if potential, then apparently in the presence of the deity absolute.
Okay, so what's the difference here? Okay, that if it's an actual spirit value, then it's in the grasp of the eternal Son. But if it's a potential, did you see the word potential there? This is what makes the difference. We know that the deity absolute functions where? In the outer space levels. And we know that the deity absolute is involved in all potentials, right? What are we talking about potentials? All possibilities into the future.
But doesn't it apply to our soul as well? In other
It
words,
does.
each of us has a soul
As
to
we
a certain
grow.
level,
Yeah.
but hopefully by the time we die, will be a much improved version, right?
Yeah.
So that difference between now and by the time we die is in potential. So whatever is already actualized in our soul is in the grasp of the eternal soul circuit,
That's
part
right.
of it, and whatever is not is part of the deity absolute. Do you
Yeah,
think that
and
it's
I'll
true to
take
say?
you one step farther than that. We go through the Morancha levels after we die. That is part of what? Our potential, right? Our potential growing. And when we hit the spiritual levels, that is really part of our potential. So the deity absolute sees the potential of our future as we become spirit beings. You follow me? That's the difference. We're already in the Son's personality, the Son's spiritual gravity circuit, right? We're already there. But as we get closer and closer and closer to first, second, third stage spirits, that potential is held within what? The deity absolute, just like they do in the outer space levels, right?
It's a holding tank.
It's a holding tank. Yeah, it's what's coming, right? Did I muddy the water on that or make it a little purer? Okay.
Spirit seems to emerge from the potentials of the deity absolute. Evolving spirit finds correlation in the experiential and incomplete grasp of the supreme and the ultimate. Spirit eventually finds final destiny in the absolute grasp of the spiritual gravity of the eternal Son. This appears to be the cycle of experimental spirit,
Experiential spirit.
experiential spirit,
Right.
and existential spirit. Existential, okay. Spirit is inherent in the infinity of the second source and center.
Okay, so this is all part of what? The emerging of the Supreme, right? We know the Supreme. See, you would know this because you have worked here earlier with us, Stephen. But we know the Supreme is the emerging of the experience of all beings. Okay, the Supreme Being, God the Supreme. All right. So we know that all the experience of everything we're doing is part of this emerging being called the Supreme. And the Supreme won't be completely finished until all the 7 super universes are completely settled in light and life. So that's way in the future. But this is what they're talking about. All this is part of in the grasp of the experiential part of the Supreme and the ultimate, as it finds destiny in the absolute spiritual gravity of the eternal Son. So as the Supreme develops over time, all this experience and everything adds to the development of the Supreme and the fruition of the Supreme as a full being. Okay? That's what they're talking about here.
So it sounds very similar to what we were talking earlier about.
Yeah,
that.
you remember the 11 classes we had? It's part of that, right? The emerging of the Supreme.
But also the potential versus the actualized.
Actual, right,
Right.
right. Okay. Next section. Jill, would you take that?
The administration of the eternal Son.
Hang on just a second, y'all. Get my other mouse. She's gone here. Bring this in a little bit. Okay.
On Paradise, the presence and personal activity of the original Son is profound, absolute in the spiritual sense. As we pass outward from Paradise through Havona and into the realms of the 7 super universes, we detect less and less of the personal activity of the eternal Son. In the post-Havona universes, the presence of the eternal Son is personalized in the Paradise Sons, conditioned by the experiential reality of the Supreme and the Ultimate, and coordinated with the unlimited spirit potential of the Deity Absolute. Makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
There is less and less of the actualized in our world,
That's
so
right.
there is less and less of the Eternal Son.
And we see it going out through from the Eternal Son through what? The Paradise Sons, right? The Creator Sons, the Danos, the Magisterial Sons, and the Avonals, right? So we see it through the Sons of God at that point. And then we see it conditioned into the future through what? The Supreme, the Ultimate, and the Deity Absolute eventually. Makes perfect sense. doesn't it?
Well, they were talking about the circuit's energy is the same, no matter how far out it goes, it's the same. But here
It's
you're
the same.
talking that the influence of the original Son gets less as it's dispensed.
Well, it's still the same though, Millie, but it gets used up. It's used through the Creator Sons, the creative Mother Spirits, rather than through the Son himself.
We detect less and less of the personal
Right.
activity of the
Right.
eternal Son.
Right.
So
And
it's well distributed.
So it's distributed at that point. That makes sense? So what we will feel, even though it's as strong as it is in Paradise, it would be through whom?
The different personalities that it's been spread through.
That's right. That's right. That makes sense?
I suppose.
so would it be true to say what would be a good analogy to think of as when there is actual spiritual growth that has already happened, there is some kind of a resonance with the internal sun spiritual gravity, right? But the emergence of that through the painful process of evolution and experience that has not fructified as yet is the realm of the creator sun and all those lower level circuit energies that is shared with the thought adjusters that are in essence, but when they if I may say, materialize as true spiritual, then the spiritual circuits start resonating with it, and there is more and more of this activity.
Yeah.
That's
Now,
the way I think of it.
Don't forget the supreme and the absolute with that too, though. There's with that resonation, you're talking about there's the potential for more and more growth too, isn't there?
Right, but that's
Always.
not part of the eternal sun,
That's not part
because
of
he's
the
not
eternal
potential, he's actual.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So but that's how the supreme and the absolute comes in, right?
Right,
Through the
absolutely.
experience and the absolute through the potentials of whatever will happen.
It's kind of interesting also to note that we have that potential which is not yet done, which is if you think about it, what hasn't happened, right, is the most the hardest. I mean, it's not even in the grasp of the second person of deity, so it must be something pretty special.
Well, you can't really say that though, because the Son, like the Father, knows the beginning to the end. So the Son, like the Father, already knows what's going to happen. See, people forget that. He's not that far removed from the Father, but so he already knows the plan, but he knows what the end of the plan looks like.
Right.
You see what I'm
Right,
saying?
but the plan that is partially done today, between the next step tomorrow and the next step, from what I understand, at least, he doesn't. He knows the end. He understands
Well,
the bucket
that's-
filled up with water,
Yeah.
but right now he sees half of water, and okay, well, there is a plan to get to the full, but I don't see every single.
Yeah, and the part that's not filled up yet, that is really the potential of the absolute, is it not?
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
they say specifically, like in the
Yeah.
previous section, that the eternal sun was limited. He has a limitation of not being connected to the absolute, right?
Right. Because that's part of what? God the Father,
That's right,
right?
absolutely.
Okay.
Personality and the gravity circuit and the absolute aspect seems to be, if I understand correctly,
Yeah.
the realm of the universal Father.
Yeah.
Right.
But you got to remember now that the Son is one of the absolutes too, right? The Son is an absolute. Eternal Spirit is an absolute. What else is an absolute? Paradise, right? So they're in that group of absolutes, which knows beginning to end what should happen. Now, the Isle of Paradise doesn't know because it's not what? It's not personality. But the Infinite Spirit and the Son should, right? They should know what's coming, in other words.
Well, I believe Jesus addressed that in the Bible, that he was, feeling real bad about what man was going to have to go through to get from where he
Yeah.
was to where he's got to go.
Yeah.
He was really, upset and discouraged about that
Yeah,
fact.
there's no
that-
surprises to God.
Yeah, he knew that it was going to be a major struggle for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on.
Yeah.
In the central universe, the personal activity of the original sun is discernible in the exquisite spiritual harmony of the eternal creation. Havona is so marvelously perfect that the spiritual status and the energy states of this pattern universe are in perfect and perpetual balance.
Okay. Whew. How do you even address this? I don't know. Because we're talking about two different existences here, aren't we? When we start talking about Havona, we're talking about a perfect, already perfect creation, right? All the beings on Havona are perfect. Life on Havona is perfect, right? So when we get there, part of our job is to discern perfection and try to fashion our existence after that perfection. And by the time we get through third stage spirits, we're pretty close to perfect ourselves, right? So by the time you hit the first planet of Havona, you're pretty close to perfection. You're not perfect 100%, but you're pretty darn close. All right, that's what a third stage spirit is about. Okay. What else do I want to say about this? Also, it brings us back to the pattern universes, which are Havona, right? The patterns, all the patterns for all the 7 super universes are from Paradise and Havona, right? So all we see out here are replicas of that perfection of Havona. And what are the Creator Sons trying to do? They're trying to get us into that perfection mode, aren't they? If you think about it. They want us to get into that same mode as Havona, into that perfection. Alright. Alright.
That's what we'll be working on after we leave this body.
That's right. In the super universes, the sun is not personally present or resident. In these creations, he maintains only a super-personal representation. These spirit manifestations of the sun are not personal. They are not in the personality circuit of the Universal Father. We know of no better term to use than to designate them super-personalities. And they are finite beings. They are neither absolute nor absolute. Who are they talking about here? They're talking about the Creator Sons, aren't they? Right?
What do you mean? Well, the Creator Sons are personal.
The Creator Sons
You said-
are personal, right?
You say these spirit manifestations of the sun are not personal.
We're talking about the creative manifestations, not the beings themselves.
Oh, okay.
Okay? The creative sons are personal. Plus, the mother spirits, ministering spirits, are personal, right? They're not like the...
They are fine. They call them beings and super personalities.
Yeah.
So they are not calling them circuits or spirit. Like I don't think they are talking about the Holy Spirit or the Spirit
Well,
of Truth.
they may be talking about some of the beings they don't tell us about, too.
Probably. That's what I suspect. I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Because they designate them super personalities, so they're not endowed with personality as we know it, right, from the Father.
Still being finite.
Still being finite. Now, what could you think about? The only thing I can relate that to would be like the power directors or things like the circuits and things like that. That's the only thing I can relate that to. But we'll leave that as a big question mark. I can't think off the top of my head who else that could be.
Yeah, I think I would guess. Right, it's just an idea. We can better understand the angels
Yeah,
that
those are
you're right,
closest to us. Yeah.
because they are part of our part of the experience of
Yeah.
the experiential life to create our experience and to spiritualize it. Right, they are part of it, so they are working with us, and it's better for us. But here I think it looks like we are talking about spirituality, kind of personality, right? Because they say they are beings, but that are kind of purely spiritual. So it's not a circuit. They are beings, but how can you be a being without having a mind and having a shell and something to function? And we are so remote from something that is purely spiritual that it's probably a challenge for.
Well, it may be some of those beings we'll run into once we become third state spirits too, along the way.
Probably, because it sounds to me that if they are so remote and, from the experiential aspect, we are the opposite of that. Our spiritualization is based on living the daily life and the struggle. So what's the correlation? How we right now it sounds like we cannot relate to those kind of beings.
That's probably part of why they did not tell us about. They talk about the thousands of types of beings that are not related to the ascension plan that they don't tell us about, and there's no reason for them to tell us about it because we won't interact with them regularly. We might see them on the way to paradise, but they will not be part of our interaction with other beings and that sort of thing.
Still be, as a little curious than I am, I'd still be interested to have some kind of an idea, if it's possible for me to have an idea, because maybe it's not even possible, of what else could
We
it
may
be
not
out there
have
in
a
the...
concept to relate to it.
That's right.
Yeah.
What could there be out there other than the ascension plan? What else can be worth it, right?
Well, remember Lucifer, you know, one of his things in his manifesto is that it was way too much time spent on these mortals and their ascension plan, you know.
Well, I think not enough.
All right.
It's a joke. It's a joke.
Yeah, I know. Are you up here?
The administration of the eternal Son in the super universes, being exclusively spiritual and superpersonal, is not discernible by creature personalities. Nonetheless, the all-pervading spiritual urge of the Son's personal influence is encountered in every place of the activities in all sectors of the domains of the ancients of days. In the local universes, however, we observe the eternal Son personally present in the persons of the Paradise Sons. Here the infinite Son spiritually and creatively functions in the persons of the majestic core of the coordinate Creator Sons.
Okay, so we're talking about here the administration of the spiritual part of the world, right? The eternal Son, the super universe, right? And it's super personal, okay? Not discernible by creature personality. So there's an administration that we don't even discern is out there, right? For the Sun's circuit, okay? So there's probably a whole host of beings for that. But they go on to tell us, nevertheless, they're used on every phase of activities and sectors and domains of the ancients of days. So they're used throughout all the 7 super universes, aren't they? Even though we're not related to them. But it goes on to say, however, we observe the eternal Son present in the persons of the Paradise Sons. And who are those? Those are the Creator Sons, the Magisterial Sons, and the Avonals, right? So, and that's the way the Son functions creatively through the universes, okay? It's pretty simple. Right? So he says, once
It's
again.
very simple. We just can't fathom and understand it. So forget it. Very simple.
Just whether we can understand it or not. Yeah. Oops, too far. Let me take it up because I can adjust it a little bit this way. Okay.
Relation of the eternal Son to the individual. In the local universe ascent, the mortals of time look to the Creator Son as a personal representative of the eternal Son. But when they begin the ascent of the super universe training regime, the pilgrims of time increasingly detect the supernal presence of the inspiring spirit of the eternal Son, and they are able to profit by the intake of this ministry of spiritual energization in Havana. The ascenders become still more conscious of the loving embrace of the all-pervading spirit of the original Son. At no stage of the entire mortal ascension does the spirit of the eternal Son indwell the mind or the soul of the pilgrim of time, but his beneficence is ever near and always concerned with the welfare and spiritual security of the advancing children of time.
Now, how is that the case? Through the Spirit of Truth, right? Through the Sons, through his agents.
Well, now through the Spirit of Truth, I think when we pass beyond the local universe,
Then it's different.
it's different, right? That's directly, it's no longer the Spirit of Truth.
Actually not that much different, Gio, because even when they tell us that even when we go from Morancha beings, when we hit Salvington, and we get our walking papers from Salvington to the minor sector, we become first stage spirits. And they say that the the how do they put it? Something along the line, the personality and we still carry with us the brand of our Creator Son. In other words, we have a personality along the line, or not a personality, but a being along the line of someone who comes from that particular Creator Son on through the universe, and we carry that all the way to paradise, supposedly. So our Creator Son influences as our Father just as much after we leave our local universe as when we're here, because we're trained here, we learn here, we're trained by his Melchizedek sons, you know, so everything, his personality becomes part of us, and we carry that along with us when we become first stage spirits. And that's true through the minor sector, the major sector, and when we get to Uversa's third stage spirits, we still carry that with us. And they say even into Havona and into paradise. So the influence of our Creator Son is pretty important, you know, if you think about it. Any way you look at it. But when we get to the spirit regime, what do you think is more obvious to us? It would be the Eternal Son. It would be that cosmic over-control, the Eternal Son. Because we don't have that direct influence as we did when we were in the local universe, right? Okay, let's keep going. Next. I think that's you, Jill.
It's me?
Yeah.
The spiritual gravity pull of the Eternal Son constitutes the inherent secret of the paradise ascension of surviving human souls. All genuine spirit values and all bona fide, bona fide spiritualized individuals are held within the unfailing grasp of the spiritual gravity of the Eternal Son. The moral mind, for example, initiates its career as a material mechanism and is eventually mustered into the core of the finality as a well-nigh perfected spirit existence, becoming progressively less subject to material gravity and correspondingly more responsive to the inward pulling urge of spirit gravity during this entire experience. The spirit gravity circuit literally pulls the soul of man paradise world.
Isn't that interesting? As we become more spiritualized, the more we feel the pull of the gravity, the spirit gravity circuit, and the less we feel the pull of what? The material. Isn't that interesting? I think that's pretty special. So, and they go on to tell us that the entire experience and the entire regime of us going from human to Morancha to spirit to Havona to paradise, all the way to becoming finality, is this process of us getting rid of what? The market of the beast, becoming less material, more Morancha, more spiritual, eventually all spiritual, and finally a finality. So it's all about the ascension plan, isn't it? All the way through.
And that, looking at least in I'm sure it's the same for every one of us, but that looking at what happened in the last 20 years, I feel it.
Yeah.
I feel it.
Yeah. More and more every day. Doesn't it seem to be the case? That kind of gives you more hope, doesn't it? You think about it. It really does.
What gives hope definitely is the fact that it's like, what do they say? It's I guess but he was saying something along the line that it's like, you know, if you want it, he's going to suck you in, you know. So when you look at the amount of or consider, you know, how low we are compared to what we can imagine, which is very not even we can possibly imagine, but whatever we can imagine, it's so far from where we are at now, right? That sometimes you want, well, yeah, how are we ever going to get there? So what I feel comforting is the fact that that pool is an absolute pool, and they want us, and as long as we don't resist it, we do whatever we have to do day after day, even if we make some mistake along the ways, we'll get there. Right? So that's what is comforting.
Just you developing that desire for it,
That's
know,
right.
then they can start correcting your path to it, know. But they got to know that you're really desiring that over this physical universe. If this is where your intentions are, then that's where you're going to stay with it, If they see that you want to move on, then hey, they're going to show you that way, pull you right into it.
I mean, several years ago, I had this vision where I saw pinnacles, and I was standing on one of the pinnacles, and I was looking around, and I just felt so great that I was there, because I saw all these other lower pinnacles, and then all of a sudden I looked up, and I couldn't even see the end of the pinnacles. They were huge, tremendously large. I mean, it was just like, okay, so you grow, but there's always so much more growth as you go through the ascension. It never ends.
Never
I just looked up and I felt so humble. And I thought, oh, God.
Let me tell y'all what I've been working on this week. Diane already knows this. I've been working on a slide presentation of what happens when you die, what actually happens from the time of death all the way to paradise. And it started out, I was doing this for children, really. That's what we originally talked about. And I started pulling some slides together for the children, really. And I was going to tell a story about what happens when you die, and I'm still going to do that for the children. But in the process, I started putting these slides together, and I thought, well, adults really need to know what happens too, what the ascension plan is. So I started putting it together, and I've got about over 100 slides now. But I've pulled all the passages out of the Urantia book, and it tracks your entire ascension plan all the way to paradise. What kind of spirit you become, what you learn on each section, that sort of thing. So when I get done with it, I'll share that with y'all. I was doing it for kind of a seminar thing, but I think it'd be beneficial to everyone. I'm going to post it on, probably maybe on YouTube when I'm done, but I'm just going to walk through it.
Isn't there like an international conference this year? Isn't it the time where like every 3 years?
Yeah.
Isn't it in
It's in
Massachusetts?
Boston.
Yeah.
Massachusetts.
Is anyone going there?
I can't afford it this year. We got too many
My
other things.
daughter's
I'd love
coming
to
in from
go.
Alaska, so
Yeah.
I'll be able to go.
Yeah. I'd like to go.
When is it?
It's in June. I think
And-
it's June 21st. Isn't it something like that?
Something like that, yeah. I've got all the information. If you need it, I can send it to you.
By the way, you need to mention our conference coming up too.
Oh yeah, I will, but let's
Okay.
finish this and I'll get offline, and then I'll tell you about, we've got something special coming up here too. Okay, who's that?
I've got this next Paradise in brackets. I don't know when I read it before, but there's something
Okay.
special about it.
All right.
The spirit gravity circuit is the basic channel for transmitting the genuine prayers of the believing human heart from the level of human consciousness to the actual consciousness of deity. That which represents true spiritual value is your petition. In your petition will be seized by the universal circuit of spirit gravity and will pass immediately and simultaneously to all divine personalities concerned. Each will occupy himself with that which belongs to his personal province. Therefore, in your practical religious experience, it is immaterial whether in addressing your supplications you visualize the Creator Son or your local universe, Eternal Son at the center of all things.
So that's your prayers, right?
That's right. They're going to go wherever they're supposed to go.
They go directly where they're supposed to go along this circuit, right? To the Creator Son, to the Eternal Son. Now, what's a prayer? That's when you're asking for something, right? Spiritually asking for something. What's the difference between that and worship? Worship goes directly to the Father, right? Remember that?
It's not asking anything.
It's not asking anything. That's right. That's right. It goes directly to the Father. And we think that goes along, what circuit would that be? That would be the one for the thought adjuster, would it not be? Because it goes
Maybe
directly
so.
to that. Huh?
Maybe so.
Yep. All right.
It's the thought adjuster who communicates with.
With God.
With
That's
God.
right. That's right. Okay. The discriminative operation of the spirit gravity circuit might possibly be compared to the functions of the neural circuits of the material human body. Sensations travel inward over the neural paths. Some are detained and responded by the lower autonomic spinal centers. Others pass on to the less autonomic but habit-trained centers of the lower brain, while the most important and vital incoming messages flash by these subordinate centers and are immediately registered in the higher levels of the human consciousness. So it works just like a brain. Goes up the circuit pathways, goes to where it's supposed to automatically, right? If you're a brain surgeon, you know exactly what happens there.
And we are really talking about the intent of our mind. You know, what is the qualitative content of what we are thinking, right?
Right.
Not so much the word of, you know, I pray that, you know, we are going to go from A to B without the car accident.
Right.
Right.
It doesn't matter what you're saying. It goes, your real intent, your spiritual intent is what goes, right? It's kind of like prayer. When you pray, you don't really have to put it into words, do you? You put it into words for yourself, so you relate what you're praying. But your real intent and your spiritual purposes goes automatically, if you think about it. And that's just like the way the brain works, okay? So if you get in a prayerful attitude, meditation, don't you think you're praying in a sense? You know?
Well, I think that was my point. It's probably more praying that what I've observed, the verbal prayer that come out of, you know, churches and wherever groups, or as a matter of fact, in some sense, even here, when we pray verbally at the end, often it's just okay. Well, thank you, blah blah blah. But I think what we're talking about here is not that.
No, it's the inner communication that's going on with
the real
that.
inner intent and longings and whatever goes on in all those activities
Yeah.
that we don't have conscious of that.
We could really pray and say, Lord, I don't have words to express what I need to say. Please understand. You know, this is me asking. You know, take what you need from me.
The closest I can find in terms of verbalizing, what I can, some other can find better, but what the closest I can find is that, okay, I have this problem, and I'm not talking about the problem, okay, you know, how to make more money.
No.
I'm talking about, okay, let's say I have this problem in this relationship. I have this problem about how to teach my kids. You know, he's misbehaving. I have this problem with this coworker or in this project in terms of the qualitative relationship, right, with others. And okay, and I feel like, for example, you are talking about what is the word you were using when you have this urge, not the urge, the strong reaction that is
rage.
the rage,
Yeah.
right? The rage of, you know, okay,
What do I do?
Yeah, so right now I feel, so okay, now please help me out here. How do I not feel?
Yeah.
How do I become more spiritual?
Yeah, bring me peace.
Yeah, so that I can react in my personal trials in a more spiritual and dignified way.
Yeah.
That's the closest I can find.
I call it the mind of Jesus. You know, give me the mind of Jesus. You know, and that's, you know, it's something in the Bible. Someplace there's a quote in the Bible that says, if you can't find something to find it in your right mind, ask for the mind of Jesus. You know, and through the Holy Spirit, you can have the mind of Jesus in any situations. You know, and that's really what prayer is about. It's trying to seek for the mind of Jesus, that calmness, respect for other people, that spiritual connection to life. You know?
Yeah, a lot of times you find that, you know, you're trying to impose yourself on that individual instead of just trying to accept whatever he throws out. But that's really one of the biggest problems we have as a society today. It's just we got too much self involved in everything we do, and we're not looking at the brotherhood on an all-around pattern, you know, and that even Jesus in his time faced that with the Sadducees and Pharisees, you know. I guess he didn't get as frustrated with it as we do, but you know, it was real hard for him to deal with these people.
But
you
the
know?
Pharisees were, it's not a matter of having different opinions, they were evil.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The Pharisees, they were evil. They were like, they knew that what they were doing, and they were going against like consciously against the truth
will of God.
and the will of God, right? That's the difference. Whereas a
they're
lot
still
in our
doing that.
lives, there may be some of that, like my wife encountering this murderer, and there are some people like that.
Yeah.
But when a lot of, thank God for me at least, I don't feel like I'm in an environment where I meet so many of those people, right? Actually, none. I feel a lot of goodness in a lot of people, even those I feel frustrated with sometimes. And so it's more like what you were saying earlier, the difference of we want to impose, or we don't understand a different perspective, or we don't understand and we have a hard time to put up with their lack of failing to react properly, and we also ourselves fail, and we each others or the group fail to understand that dynamic, and we get all frustrated about that.
Right.
With the Pharisees, it's more than that. It's actually evil,
Yeah.
right?
They were really going against what
Well, I mean, but if you looked at Paul, I mean, here he was putting them in jail and everything, and still some point down the line, he actually said, wait a minute, this might not be the best idea I've had today.
Yeah.
So I guess they really believed in what they were doing. They didn't really see it as evil. Man has a way of doing that. He always justifies.
Oh yeah, justify that.
Always can justify.
Oh my God, we are so good at that.
Oh
We
yeah.
are good at something is that.
Let's keep going here. Who's up? Who read last?
I read last.
Okay, that's me. But how much more perfect is the superb technique?
No, the
Yeah.
discriminative.
Huh?
I read the one on prayer, the spirit gravity circuit. So you read the discriminative
I'm
operation.
sorry, I skipped over it, didn't I? Read back up one. Skipped it. Okay. The discriminative operation of the spirit. No. I just read that.
Yeah.
I
So
just
Diane.
read that. So Diane.
Oh, it's
you
my
read that.
choice.
Okay. I was on the right slide. Right slide, wrong person. Hang on. Go ahead.
But how much more perfect is the superb technique of the spiritual world? If anything originates in your consciousness that is fraught with supreme spiritual value, when once you give it expression, no power in the universe can prevent its flashing directly to the absolute spirit personality of all creation.
So it flashes there automatically, doesn't it?
Wow.
You don't even have to think about it. That's almost scary if all right.
Wow, flash.
So I wonder what's. I don't think there is an answer to the question, but if we look at the spiritual potential that we have in this world, I wonder how much that of those flashes occur. What it really means.
I would think it would be just like on any other planet. I really do. Even though we're in quarantine, that the messages still get through, right? The spiritual gravity circuit. So.
Right, but what are
Of course, they know they have to. The eternal Son. Well, even the Creator Sons and everything else. Everything has to be honed because of the fact that we're in rebellion. They know it's coming from a rebellion-torn world, so the communications are going to be just like what would happen on a rebellion-torn world. It's not going to be perfect, but the stuff that's good still goes through, right?
Okay. Conversely, if your supplications are purely material and wholly self-centered, there exists no plan whereby such unworthy prayers can find lodgment in the spirit circle of the Eternal Son. The content of any petition which is not spirit indicted can find no place in the universal spiritual circuit. Such purely selfish and material requests fall dead. They do not ascend in the circuits of true spirit values. Such words are as sounding brass and a tinkling cymbal.
Is that straightforward as it could be?
Yeah, that's it. You
So if
know?
it's selfish, self-centered, it falls dead, right?
And how many prayers are in that line?
A
Wow,
lot. So
man.
if you go praying to win the lottery, you think it's going to get past the ceiling? Not
How
like
about to win the war?
what about if you pray to be more spiritual in your reaction in your daily lives, right? Like what I was saying
That's a
earlier.
valid prayer, though.
Well, that's self-centered.
No, well, it is, but it's self-centered for the benefit of others, if you think about it. If it's worded correctly. In other words, when you pray for spiritual enlightenment, do you not only benefit yourself, you benefit all those surrounding you?
Yeah, and
Yeah, it's
that
not
might
to
be
glorify
one where
yourself,
it's,
it's to glorify God.
yeah,
If it's to glorify God, yeah.
it might be self-centered out of your mouth, but it isn't in their interpretation of it if it's for the betterment.
I don't think it would be part of this sounding brass and tinkling
Nah.
cymbals.
Because God will know your intent.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's read, let's get one more paragraph here before we quit. I think it's the end of this one. And we'll take it up from that on Wednesday. Jill, would you take that last one?
It is the motivating thought, the spiritual content that validates the moral supplications. Words are valueless.
That's what we were just talking about, Mark.
Mhm.
You know how, no matter, sometimes there's things you need to say that you can't find words to say, isn't it? And if it's spirit motivated, it still goes through it,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, and that's the stage that I think we're starting to look at is focusing more on our spiritual values than the material world, you
Right.
know, and then trying to form a material world out of our spiritual values,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. All right, let's take this up on Wednesday. We'll take this up Wednesday night from this point. Now, let's talk about something. I want to talk about one thing before we get off camera so that folks at home know that this is coming. Starting next Sunday morning, I'm going to have a 9 o'clock Skype session every Sunday morning from 9. We're going to go all the way through one of the papers on the life of Christ. We're going to try to get all the way through it every Sunday morning. And we'll start that next week, and we're going to do that except for the 1 week a month we meet here. Okay? So if you'd like to join me in Skype next Sunday, I'll be on at 9. Anyone of y'all that would like to join us. If no one joins us, it'll be me and Diane, and I'll record it and put it out there. But y'all are welcome to come join us every Sunday morning. And we're going to go probably 9 to 11. It usually takes a couple hours to get all the way through the paper. We're going to do a lot of reading, not as much discussion on the life of Christ because it's not necessary. It's pretty much most of it's self-explanatory. So we'll start that next week. Let's have a prayer. I'm going to turn off the cameras, and I got something else I need to tell y'all about. So, Jill, would you like to pray?
I was going to ask a question, but I guess I can ask my question.
No, you can ask your question. Go ahead.
I don't know if you tell me if it's relevant for the. My question was about. It looks like you have decided to move forward. This Sunday meeting, the once a month, is the continuation of what's going on Wednesdays,
is.
which means that for someone like me who does not participate in a Wednesday meeting, there is a hole.
Well, that's not going to be the case. We're going to start doing on Sunday, we're going to start doing the life of Christ. But I still want to do once a month on the Sunday meeting because right now we're going all the way through the book. And I want to start on the beginning of the life of Christ. We already did the first 3 papers, so I'm going to continue on from that. And I want to keep going on from the beginning of the book. And this gives everyone an opportunity to discuss the beginning of the book and the life of Christ too over Skype. So we can talk about it.
What he's saying is though that when he's not here on Wednesday night, we finished paper 6 and he missed that portion of it.
Right.
Because
And you can't make it on Wednesday nights?
It's really bad. I mean, that's between work and then that's the time of putting the kids to bed and.
Well, you know, you can't listen to it usually by Friday of that week.
Yeah.
I always have it on Skype. It's not as much fun as participating. Yeah. But yeah, I've tried every combination to figure out how to make this work. I'm not sure. We'll discuss it some more. Think about it some more. I might come up with another plan. Let's say a prayer. We'll talk about it some more, and I'll turn off the cameras. All right.
All right. Well, thank you, the Universal Father, the Eternal Son, the Conjunct Actor, the Creator Sons, and all the angelic hosts that help us in the Ascension plan. to spiritualize our experience. Today I don't think I'm going to pray. I just want to say a couple of words, some thoughts going towards Louise Wenkenberg, who had a couple of weeks ago a stroke, and just want to give some positive thoughts towards Louise, her recovery, feeling better, and Cap and their family in terms of having the courage to deal with situations. As Louise, as is a very sweet lady, has done a lot of good, and it's hard for us human beings to see our loved ones being incapacitated, and so just some positive thoughts and courage for their family, and hopefully she'll be able to recover, even though it may be a lot of hard work. And second thought is to that little girl I didn't get a chance to meet, who is afflicted with a tough cancer, and I'm very glad to hear that she has a lot of energies and courage to go through the difficulties of that situation. She suffers a lot, but on the other hand, I'm very saddened by the lack of openness of her parents to look at other ways to help her. So my, I guess, not prayer but thought is positive towards giving them courage to go through the situation, particularly this little girl, and somehow, some way, give how do you say that, good how do you say that?
Compassion.
Openness to the parents to find new and better ways to deal with the situation and help the little girls. That's really what I have in my mind and heart at the present moment, and I pray that something positive happens and that we as human beings can help those people in amen.
Amen. Thank you for joining us. Please come see us again.
I did not know